In the NBA, we watch players for years, hear about them having all this money, winning MVPs, becoming all-time greats, and enjoying all the perks of being an NBA player. That's all of what we see, but we usually don't see these players' struggles or even think about them until after they've already succeeded and made it. So that's why we're going back today and looking at part 1 of the 11 greatest never give up stories in the NBA today, with players that were in situations where a lot of people would have given up, but these guys didn't, and it helped them make them to where they're at now. And the first one goes to Seth Curry. Now, Steph Curry is only 2 years older than Seth, but he's definitely been the better brother at basketball, and it's only recently that Seth has developed into a really good overall player. And seeing all of his brother's success and his lack of success, it would have been easy for him to give up. So Steph was a highly recruited college athlete, while Seth was only a 3-star recruit out of high school. And Steph would go on to play 3 years at Davidson before getting drafted 7th overall into the NBA, while his younger brother played 1 year at Liberty University, then 4 years at Duke, and still went undrafted in 2013. And from there, his path was tough. His entire life he had known he wasn't as good of a player as his older brother. Steph always just had something that he didn't. They both started playing from the same age, and even though Steph was older, Seth wasn't doing the same things as him when he got to that age. And especially after going undrafted, he had to accept that, and accept that he was gonna have a much different career. So for the next 4 years, he bounced around the G League, summer league teams, getting 10-day contracts, getting very little playing time in NBA games, and never truly getting an opportunity. And it was tough. Steph was winning an MVP with the Warriors, and Seth was playing 2 games for the Phoenix Suns all season long. And even though he would play great in all the situations he was put in, he never got a real chance until 2015 when he averaged 24 points for the Pelicans Summer League team, so the Kings signed him to a 2-year, $2 million deal. And that was his chance. That was his start. He had remained consistent over so many years that someone finally noticed. So he played in 44 games for the Kings, only averaging 6 points a game, but now other teams started to notice him. So the next year he signed with the Mavs, averaging career highs in every category in his biggest role as a starter. Played for Portland next, then back to the Mavs, and now he's on the 76ers, finally as a full-time starter at 30 years old. So it just goes to show why you should never compare yourself to anyone and never give up. He easily could have given up after not getting his own chance, after seeing his brother's success, but instead he continued, and it's paying off now. Fred VanVleet. And you might have seen or heard about this one recently with all the success that he's been having over the past year or so, but it deserves to be mentioned. So Fred started to get good in high school, and when he did, instead of joining a high-profile AAU team in Chicago, he chose to stay loyal to his local AAU team, and that costed him, because he now wasn't getting recruited by the big schools like he felt that he should have. And he was only a 3-star recruit, so he ended up going to Wichita State, which wasn't really a great look for his hopes at the NBA. He was 5'10", a 3-star recruit, and playing for a smaller school. But even throughout his 4 years in college, he was nominated and recognized for a countless amount of awards. He was pretty known nationally as a good player, but his team never made any real noise, and he averaged 10 points a game throughout his 4 years. But he still had high hopes, so he threw a draft night party and invited all of his friends and family to watch the draft and see him get drafted. So it was very disappointing and awkward when he went undrafted that year. But he didn't let that stop him. Instead, he was able to join the Raptors Summer League squad, and he impressed them enough to make the final cut on their team. And that year he played very limited minutes for Toronto, but helped their D-League team to winning the championship. The next year he was now playing 20 minutes a game and played nearly every game for the Raptors off their bench, and was so good in net efficiency and plus minus that he was nominated for the 6th Man of the Year award. Then in 2018 he started getting chances as a starter and rose to the occasion, averaging new career highs. And now, as we've seen the past 2 years, the Toronto Raptors have given him the starting spot, and he averaged 17 a game last year, played amazing in the playoffs, and is now averaging 20 points per game this season. So it goes to show, even though he made the wrong choices in high school and in college about where to play and started off on the wrong track, he just kept going, believing his own abilities, and now made it to where he's probably belonged all along. Russell Westbrook. So we all know Westbrook as one of the NBA's best, a former MVP, scoring champ, assist leader, as well as a countless amount of other achievements. But it wasn't always that way. It didn't just get like that overnight, because when Russ entered high school, he was a 5'8" point guard that weighed 140 pounds. He wasn't a great player either. He didn't start on his school's varsity team till his junior junior year and didn't receive his first recruiting letter until the start of his senior season. And he received it because by that summer, he had a huge growth spurt to 6'3". So as a senior, he averaged 25, 8, and 3 and got offers from smaller schools, but was still only a 3-star recruit, so he didn't get any from bigger schools until Jordan Farmar declared for the NBA draft. So UCLA needed a point guard and recruited Russ. But this just goes to show Westbrook didn't know that he'd get that huge growth spurt. If he hadn't been putting in the work throughout all of high school, he wouldn't have been ready for that huge senior season when it came, so he deserves some credit there. But then at UCLA in his first year, he's a backup for Darren Collison and really only averages 3 points and 0.7 assists per game, mainly coming off the bench as their energy and defense guy. Not the start you'd imagine the future league MVP would have, but the team advanced to the Final Four and scouts loved his defense. So he gets a starting spot the next year and averages 12 and 4, and his extreme athleticism shined through. So combine that with his defense and UCLA making it to the Final Four again, and he was ready for the NBA draft. Entered it and got taken 4th overall. So his start to the game really was slow, from high school all the way to his first year of college. But he never stopped putting in the work, never gave up, and without them, he wouldn't be nearly the player he is today. JAVALE McGee. And JAVALE doesn't really have a career story like everyone else in this video. He was a star in high school, played great in college, and got drafted 18th overall to the NBA. Due to his size, skill, and talent, he was always a pretty good player early on, and even though in the NBA he's been pretty on and off as a starter that has never really had great stats, he's included in this video because he really went from being known as a true meme, a Shaq'd and a Fool MVP, a guy that was mainly known for making dumb plays, to now being a 3-time NBA champion, and a guy that had a pretty good role in all 3 of those teams, 2 for the Warriors and 1 last year for the Lakers. And hey, with talks about the Nets wanting to acquire him from the Cavs, he could even make a run at a 4th title in 5 years if that trade happens. And really through all this, I think a lot of people forget about the fact that for a while, he was known as the funny guy of the NBA. So shout out to JAVALE. Christian Wood. So here's the big one coming out of the NBA this year, and you've probably heard the key points of the story and how he never gave up, but here's the full thing. So he was a solid player in high school, ranked the 36th best player in his class, and 8th best at his position. So he went to UNLV, and after a slow start, he averaged 16, 10, and 3 as a sophomore, and there were talks that he would be a late first round pick if he entered the NBA draft. So he did, and I don't know what happened between him entering the draft and him not only not going late in the first round, but him going completely undrafted. But since then, there were rumors that teams were concerned with his character and personality. Like for example, in 2019, it was reported that multiple sources and multiple different people called Pistons head coach Dwayne Casey and told him not to sign Christian Wood because of that reason. So I'm guessing that could be why his draft stock plummeted. Either way though, it did, and it was tough because on draft night in 2015, Wood rented out an event space, invited everyone he knew to watch him get drafted, and nobody picked him, leaving this image online that went viral. And it got worse because his girlfriend broke up with him later that night because he didn't make it to the NBA. And this is where a lot of people would have given up. They would have quit and moved on, but Wood didn't, and it's paying off. The path was tough though. He joined the 76ers Summer League team and bounced between the G League team and the main roster for a season. And in Philly, his teammate Tony Roten remembers him not getting playing time and asking him, "What is Coach Brown seeing? I'm better than all these guys on this team." So that shows that he's always believed in himself and knew how good he was. But then for the next 4 years, he spent them bouncing around NBA rosters, getting waived, joining D-League teams, getting waived, going to play in China, getting waived, and never really actually getting a chance. But that only lasted until 2019 when he made a name for himself on the Pistons. Obviously, Detroit was a bad team, and they gave him his first real chance, letting him play and not waiving him after just a couple months. And after closing out the season putting up 22 and 10 on 40% from 3, teams knew he was the real deal. So the Rockets signed him to a $41 million contract, and he has not disappointed. I think he's shown that he's been this good the entire time. And it really makes you wonder, how could a player as good as him, now continuing to average 23 and 10, fall through the cracks for the past 5 seasons and never actually get an opportunity? And it makes you think, how many other players have there been that had what it took but never got their chance? The only difference between them and Christian Wood though is that Wood never gave up. Like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed. By the time you're watching this, part 2 is either coming soon or linked in the description.